Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to the first live session. Okay, so I will take the questions one by one. So Vivek's question is the first question. He's asking, uh, please explain negligible functions with example. So intuitively, negligible functions are functions uh, which approaches zero. Okay, as we keep on increasing the value of security parameter. Okay, asymptotically, if we keep on increasing the value of the security parameter, and they should approach to zero. That means they are so small that we can ignore them off for most practical purposes. So how do we formally capture their security requirement? So basically we say that if we have a function f of n is called negligible function in the security parameter, and if f of n is strictly less than the inverse of every polynomial function p of n. Okay, so p of n is some polynomial function, and a candidate function f of n will be considered as a negligible function if f of n is less than every inverse of every polynomial function. So examples of negligible functions: 2 power minus n, 2 power minus log n, and so on. Okay, all these are negligible functions. Of course, we can have several other forms of negligible functions. N power uh, minus n log n. All these are negligible functions. So, for instance, let us see why 2 power minus n is a negligible function. If you take 2 power minus n, it is of the form 1 over 2 power n, and asymptotically you take any polynomial function p of n, 1 over 2 power n is of course strictly less than 1 over p of n for every polynomial function p of n. Okay, of course, uh, for some initial value of n onwards, for some starting value of n onwards. Okay, so these are similar to what we have the big O notations, right? In the algorithms and data structure course, you must have encountered time complexities of the form order of n square O of n cube, right? When do we say a function f of n is equal to O of n square? We say f of n is O of n square if f of n is less than equal to some constant times n square for every n greater than equal to some big N onwards. In the same way, we are giving a class of functions which asymptotically approaches zero. So basically, limit n tending to zero, n tending to infinity, f of n approaches zero. To formally state that, we require that f of n should be strictly less than the inverse of every polynomial functions. So wherever intuitively you have any function of n occurring in the negative form in the exponent, you can think of that function as negligible. Okay, that's intuitively the idea behind negligible function. Okay, so I hope that clears your doubt, Vivek. Okay, so is my explanation regarding negligible function clear, Vivek? So let me go to the second question again by Vivek. So he's asking give examples of reduction based proof. So well, in this short session, it is not possible to give examples of reduction based proofs. So I can give you the following analogy. So assuming you have gone through complexity theory course, right, where we want to prove that a new computational problem uh, is hard. So I am assuming familiarity with NP completeness, NP hardness, and so on, right? So if I want to prove that a new problem X, right, is very difficult to solve. Difficult to solve means we do not have an efficient algorithm to solve it intuitively. How do we end up showing that? So we take some existing problem Y, okay, and then we show that if you can solve the new problem X efficiently, then you can solve the existing problem Y efficiently as well. But the existing problem Y is already known to be hard. Hard in the sense we have already proved that, well, there there exists no efficient algorithm, or there is no way to solve it efficiently. That automatically shows that a new problem is also difficult to solve as well. Right, so again let me open the board and explain what I am trying to say here. Okay. So we have an existing hard problem to solve. We have proved this already. And we have a new problem X to be shown. Okay, we have a new problem X which we want to show is hard to solve. The way we do it through reductions in complexity theory is by showing that if we can solve X easily, then we can solve Y easily as well. But wait, this later statement is not true, because we have already proved that Y is difficult to solve. That means whatever we have assumed regarding the solvability of X, that's also not correct. That means we cannot solve X easily. That's intuitively what we do through reduction proofs in complexity theory. Okay, and this reduction basically is done by reducing an instance of the problem Y to an instance of the problem X. Right. So for instance, if your Y is the 3-set problem, and if your X is, say, click finding problem, then through reduction we show that you give me any instance of 3-set problem, I can reduce it to an instance of the click finding problem. And then if my click finding problem is easy to solve, then so is my 3-set problem, which is not true. Now in cryptography reductions, we are actually trying to prove something similar. We are trying to do something similar. Suppose I want to prove a statement of the following form, that if problem X is difficult, then scheme Y is secure. Or a statement of the form that if scheme X is secure, then so is scheme Y. Okay. The way we prove these kind of statements through reduction is the following. We show, let us take this later class of statements. We will show that, well, if Y is not secure, then X is not secure as well. And how do we show this through reduction? We show that if there is an attack against Y, then using that attack, we can come up with an attack against X as well. So relating an attack against Y to an attack against X is basically what we do through reductions. But at the first place, there is no attack against X possible because I am assuming that X is secure. That means whatever attack we have assumed to exist against Y also does not exist. So it's like putting the blame on something else. You want to prove that if something existing is secure, then the new thing which you are constructing is secure, right? And to do that, we are basically taking the help of reductions. Okay. So is that clear? So in fact, this whole course is about reductions. Okay. Where do I apply the reductions? So throughout the course, we actually prove statements of the following form, whatever form I have written in the board. That if something is, so if PRG is there, then I can design a scheme secure against ciphertext only attacker. Or if pseudo random functions exist, and I can design a chosen plaintext attack secure scheme. And the way we prove those statements is that if the scheme is not CPA secure, then my PRF was not secure at the first place. That's typically the way we give security proofs in cryptography. Okay. What is the significance of hardcore predicate? Okay. So again, hardcore predicate basically captures what exactly is difficult to compute, which portion of the input is difficult to compute in the context of a one-way function. So let me again print the board here. So for instance, if I take a function of the form, say f of x, it takes n input bits, say. And what it produces in the output, it just produces the first n minus 1 input bits as the output. And the last input bit is chopped off. That's the way function f is defined. Okay. Now, if I give you the output f of x1 to xn for some x1 to xn, but I do not tell you the input. I do not tell you the full input, but I give you the output. And then I ask you, can you tell me what was x of n? Well, you can only guess. And your guess could be right with probability half, and that's all. So corresponding to this function f, coming up with the last bit of the input will be considered. So coming up with the last bit of the input given only the function output will be considered as the hardcore predicate for this function. Will be considered as the hardcore predicate for this function. Of course, the form of the hardcore predicate will differ, and it depends upon the form of your function. So what we had proved in the lectures is that if you have a one-way function, then corresponding to that there is always a hardcore, there is always an associated hardcore predicate. Okay, so basically you can imagine that uh, hardcore predicate as some kind of information about the input which should be difficult because it's hard to compute based on the function output. If I just give you the function output and challenge you that, okay, can you compute this piece of information regarding my input? And if it is difficult to compute, then that's called a hardcore predicate. Okay. Is there any problem solving exercise we can refer to before attending the assessment? Well, you have to practice lots of problems. You can refer to various textbooks. Boneshub's textbook is another textbook which gives you some examples to solve, but uh, I guess in the assignments I'm not asking very difficult questions. It's relatively easier question. You can always discuss among yourself by forming groups, and there are no standard textbooks there are standard textbooks, but we do not have a huge collection of question banks like you have in data structures, algorithms, discrete maths, right? So we do not have large collection of problems to practice, and before the assessments, you need to develop your understanding properly, and which you can do. Uh, what you can do, for instance, is take some existing construction which we have proved to be secure in the class, try to modify it, and see what happens, where exactly it breaks down, or whether the modified construction still remains secure. Try to do some kind of assessment like this before attempting the assignment questions. So that also answers Rick James' question, because we do not have many practice questions. So even the questions which we have in the assignments, they have been cooked. It's not available in any textbook and so on. If you want one book, which book you will serve the purpose good? Well, I am following the Cart-Cylinder textbook, but you can also, if you do not want to buy it, if you find it expensive to buy it, you can refer to the textbook by Cart-Cylinder. You can refer to the textbook by Bonnet and Shoup as well, Dan Bonnet and Victor Shoup. That is freely available for download. But there the notations will be slightly different from what we are following in the lectures, but the technical aspect of the explanations, those things remain the same. The Cart-Cylinder textbook is not freely available for downloading. Okay, if you are able to download it freely, then someone has uploaded pirated version, which should not be the case. Okay. Will there be some session on the practical implement? No, this course is not about applied. So this applied side of the cryptography unfortunately will not be covered in this course. Of course, you have some courses on network security available on NPTEL, I believe so. You can refer to them. Or otherwise, there is also a course on cryptographic engineering available on NPTEL. You can refer to them. I think there will be more live sessions. One live session is planned every month. But otherwise, if you have doubts, you can always post it on the discussion forum, and TAs ensure that the questions are answered regularly. Can RSA security be proved by proofs? Yes, if we assume that, okay, loosely speaking, if we assume that factoring is a difficult problem to solve, then later we will show in the course that RSA encryption scheme is also difficult to break. But if someone solves the factoring problem, the security simply vanishes. Okay. What is polynomial running time? Well, so I assume that people have some basic understanding of algorithms. So whenever we talk about algorithms, we also measure the running time of the algorithm. That means what is the number of steps, how much time it will take basically to run the algorithm. And the number of steps or the time taken to run the protocol, to run the algorithm, is measured as a function of your input size. Okay, it's measured as a function of your input size. That function could be a polynomial function, it could be an exponential function, it could be a polylogarithmic function. So whenever we say that we have a polynomial running time algorithm, we mean to say that the time taken to run that algorithm is a polynomial function of your input size. So for instance, if we take, I am assuming that you are familiar with sorting problem and sorting algorithms. If we take bubble sort, quick sort, merge sort, their running times are polynomial. Okay, bubble sort takes order n square comparisons, so it is a polynomial time algorithm. Okay, quick sort and merge sort, it takes n log n time, so their running time is also polynomial. Okay. Can hardcore predicate maybe other bits except the last bit prediction? Well, fantastic question. I never expected such an interesting question. Yes, it could be any other bits as well. So, for instance, the Goldrich-Levin theorem, it says that uh, the candidate hardcore predicate that we took for constructing our PRG function, there was a random linear combination of the bits of input. It need not be the last bit always. So as I said, it depends upon the concrete function, the form of the hard code, the piece of information regarding the input which is difficult to compute, the hard predicate regarding the input. It depends upon the exact function. So the last bit example which I have used, that need not be always the hard code predicate for every function f, right? There could be another function which actually chops off only the first bit and gives you all the remaining n minus 1 bits. There I can't say that computing the last bit of the input is the hardcore part. There the computing the first bit is the difficult part. So it depends upon the exact function description that decides your hardcore predicate. Okay, and different functions may have different hardcore predicates, but we required hardcore predicate to come up with a candidate uh, PRG construction, and for that we just took the help of Goldrich-Levin theorem. Post the names of the book. Well, I have already given them in the introductory lecture, but for your reference, again, let me type it out here. Okay. So the main book I am following, it's the textbook by Katz and Lindell. It's a wonderful textbook. Introduction to Modern Cryptography. And there is another textbook by Bonnet and Shoup. It's freely available to download. Okay. So you can use any of these two textbooks, reference books. Are there any encryption schemes in the course where vulnerabilities have been recently found but not mentioned in the lecture videos? No. So we have only discussed those schemes which are still believed to be secure and against which no vulnerabilities have been reported yet. Okay. So please ask other questions if you have any. I am available here. How to implement these cryptography concepts in programming? So again, as I said, cryptographic engineering is a different ball game altogether, and that is not my expertise. If you want to learn more about cryptographic engineering, there are courses available on NPTEL regarding how to implement these schemes in programming and what are the challenges involved and what are the important things, important considerations you need to keep while implementing them. Okay. So in this course, we will be focusing mostly on the theory part and how exactly we prove the schemes to be mathematically secure. Which candidate secure one-way function used in practical applications? Again, a very good question. So later on, when we will consider the public key cryptography, okay, where there we will discuss schemes like RSA encryption schemes and Ilgamal encryption scheme, Diffie-Hellman key exchange protocol. So there we will see candidate one-way functions which are coming into picture. So for instance, for RSA scheme, we will use the factoring problem. Okay, namely, the function will be I take two random prime numbers and multiply them and give you the product. That's a function. You have to invert it back. Okay. Of course, this is not the exact candidate one-way function which is used to prove the security of RSA. We require something more on top of this. But intuitively, for your understanding, factoring is the function which we use there for RSA. In the same way, for Diffie-Hellman key exchange protocol, which forms the basis of SSL and TLS, we use a discrete log problem. Okay. Again, to explain these terms, I need to introduce number theory, which unfortunately we can't do in this short live session. But believe me, they are there in the later part of the course. Okay, the exact candidate one-way functions and how do we construct schemes based on those candidate one-way functions in practice. Okay. MD5, SHA1, SHA2, they are not candidate one-way functions, by the way. They are, well, we believe they are like one-way functions, but they are not candidate one-way functions. Okay. We have the one-way, we believe the one-wayness properties from the hash functions, but that need not be always true. So if you have other questions, uh, feel free to ask anything regarding whatever we have covered till now, indistinguishability notion, and anything, whatever we have covered till now. Well, to answer that question, why at the first place you are taking this course, Rohit? Okay, tell me about your background, what you are doing. And why you took this course. Well, this course is just gives you a preliminary uh, view regarding what exactly the cryptography is all about, right? Of course, cryptography is no longer just about encryption and decryption or secure communication. As I mentioned in the first lecture, there are plenty of other advanced applications of cryptography. I do offer an advanced course on cryptographic protocols called Secure Computation, right? So there we talk about how do we use cryptographic mechanisms to do secure computations. If you want to explore that area, you are free to take that course. So part one of secure computation I already offered last year. I will be offering the part two of secure computation course next semester. So those things you can pursue. If you are doing BSc in cybersecurity, you can take courses related to network security. They are also available on NPTEL. Okay. And then after your BSc, depending upon whether you want to pursue higher studies or not, or you want to go to industry, you can decide what you want to do. But cyber security in itself is a very important hot area. This course basically tells you that what are the fundamental things which are available in cryptography and how do we formally define them. How to learn to prove the theorems you have explained, again through practice. There is no standard method. As and when, so as I said, take the schemes which I have proved to be secure in the class, come up with their variations, and see whether the variations are secure or not. That's the only way through which you can practice more and more constructions and see whether you can get the intuition. How to approach any problem? Again, through intuition means that intuition develops through practice only. Okay, so the best way will be to take constructions. So so for instance, XOR, doing concatenation, these are some basic operations. You can think of similar operations and then ask yourself whether the new construction is secure or not. Discuss among yourself, post in the forum. That's the way you can develop your intuition. So I'm here for 5 more minutes. If you have questions, feel free to ask. It's believed to be, not believed to be, we take it to be one way, okay, but we should not actually. Over a period of time, the weaknesses emerge in one way, whatever MD5, SHA-1 family. But for practical purposes, for practical instantiations, we do take them as a candidate one-way functions. But ideally, we should try to avoid. We should try to avoid the one-wayness property. We should try to avoid using the one-wayness property or the assumed one-wayness property of the hash function. Okay. And it's the hash function need not be always one to one. You can have many. In fact, it's not possible to have a one to one hash function because fundamentally you have many more inputs compared to the number of outputs which are generated by the hash function. This will be clear when we will see hash functions related lectures later in the course. So in this particular course, I never used the one-wayness property, or I never claimed the one-wayness property of hash function and use it. But in applications like blockchain, we do assume the one-wayness property of hash function. So if someone gives me the hash of some input, it should be, we believe that it should be difficult for that person to come up with the exact input. That's what we assume, but we should try to avoid using this property as much as possible. So let me see whether some other questions are there. Uh, there was this question from Devisha Aruna Devi Tiwari. Uh, I don't see any question from Devisha, but uh, she's basically asking regarding how to solve problems and how to come up with the right answers. So again, as I said, you have to practice. You have to come up with the variations of the schemes which are already proved to be secure and try to prove whether the variations are secure or not. That's the way you can practice more questions. Security of majority key exchange protocols are dependent on this property. I agree, but that's a sorry state of affair. Not really. Basically, I think you are talking about the random oracle model property. So, I would like not to answer these questions at the moment. Probably once you go through the hash functions related lectures and random oracle model property, I think you yourself will get answers to your questions. Okay, so are there any other questions from the participants? Okay, so there are no more questions, then I end this session. It was nice interacting with many of you. If you have any other questions, feel free to post them in the forum. The TAs will answer them regularly. Okay, so wishing you all the best for the coming up uh, weeks, coming up lectures, and see you next month for the next during the next live session. Thank you.